We love the stories of the great conquerors, right? Those larger-than-life figures who forged nations with fire and sword. But what happens the day after the big victory parade? Well, today, we're going to talk about the forgotten genius who came after all that. The guy who took a fragile, brand-new idea and built an empire that would last for millennia. And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Winning a war is just one moment. It might change the lines on a map, but it doesn't automatically create order or loyalty or a country that actually works. So how do you turn a conquest into a real, lasting nation? To really get this, we've got to rewind the clock all the way to the very beginning of ancient Egypt. This is right after the legendary King Narmer unified the upper and lower kingdoms. It was this incredible achievement, something they carved into stone to remember forever. But there was a huge problem lurking just beneath the surface. See, what Narmer had created was the concept of a united Egypt. He was the ultimate symbol of this new unity. But on the ground, for everyday people, nothing had really changed. The old local loyalties, the old power structures, they were all still there. The actual machinery of a state, control, administration, law, and order, it just didn't exist yet. And this is where our main guy, Narmer's successor, Hor Aha, enters the picture. He didn't inherit some stable, peaceful kingdom. Nope, he inherited a crisis just waiting to explode. He wasn't a conqueror trying to unite a land. He was basically an administrator desperately trying to keep one from completely falling apart.
And this really gets to the core of his challenge. I mean, think about it. You had all these local chieftains and regional bigwigs who still controlled the land, the food, and the people. The Pharaoh, way off in some distant capital, he was just a name, a symbol. The unification was more of a promise than a reality, and Hor Aha knew that being a symbol was totally useless if you couldn't actually enforce your power.
So what do? You can't just conquer your own country all over again. Hor Aha's solution was way more radical and honestly way smarter. He started the long, difficult job of building the actual machinery of a government, literally from the ground up. And his blueprint was just brilliant. First, he completely changed the job description of Pharaoh. The king was no longer just some divine figurehead. He was now the central decision-maker, the CEO of Egypt Incorporated. Then, he created a whole new class of people, government officials who were loyal to him, not their hometown. He started to systematically catalog and control all the resources. And crucially, he made sure the king's authority was felt everywhere, not with an army, but with an administration. His whole philosophy is summed up perfectly by this idea. Central power doesn't need to be seen everywhere, but it must be felt everywhere. It wasn't about putting a royal guard in every single village. No way. It was about creating a system, a network of tax collectors, scribes, and governors that tied every single part of the kingdom back to the throne. It was like this invisible web of control, but man, was it strong. So this brings us to a really important distinction, a tale of two different kinds of leaders, Narmer, the famous founder, and Hor Aha, the overlooked builder. Their jobs were completely different, but you absolutely needed both of them. Let's just break it down. When you look at the table, it's crystal clear. Narmer's contribution? Unification. His method? Grand symbolism. He created a national idea. Now look at Hor Aha. His contribution was stability. His method? Building systems. He's the one who turned that idea into a functioning state machine. So, Narmer gave Egypt its big historic moment, but Hor Aha gave it a lasting order. One was the revolutionary, the other was the statesman who made sure the revolution actually stuck around. And because of what he did, building a bureaucracy isn't as flashy as winning a war. Hor Aha's legacy has been kind of invisible. It's been totally overshadowed by the warrior king who came before him. But you could argue his impact was even more profound. At the end of the day, Hor Aha's genius wasn't about conquering new lands. It was about building the internal structure, the administrative skeleton that allowed the Egyptian state to actually function. It's what let them endure and control that huge territory for the next 3,000 years. He didn't expand Egypt's borders. He expanded its capacity. I mean, his achievements are literally the foundations of Egyptian civilization. He created the first real bureaucracy. He made sure that power could pass smoothly from one king to the next without everything collapsing. He set the precedent for the pharaoh as the head of government, not just a warrior chief. And most importantly, he's the guy who took Narmer's single moment of victory and turned it into a permanent state. So this leaves us with one last thought to chew on.
We build statues for the conquerors. We tell these epic stories about the unifiers. But maybe the true unsung heroes of history are the organizers, the administrators like Hor Aha, who do the quiet, difficult, and frankly unglamorous work of turning a great idea into a reality that lasts. What do you think?